it's such a privilege to come your way again. Unfortunately, yesterday this session couldn't hold, but today we thank God that everything is. Please make welcome my brother. The drum is rolling for you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's good to be here. And again, I'd also like to join to apologize for the unfortunate technical glitch yesterday. We weren't able to have the program, but again, it's a new day and we're here, we're strong, and we're ready to go.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. As always, I am delighted to have to talk to you on matters that I find useful to people. This is because over time, we are what we put inside of us. The things we let into our space shapes the way we see life and in turn affect the outcome of our life. So thank you for accepting to do this with us. Without
My
wasting so
pleasure.
much time, I would want people to meet you maybe away from the introduction I did yesterday about your bio. And I want you to say a few things about yourself, say the things you're passionate about, and maybe many other things that I didn't include there. Then we kick the conversation from there.
All right, great. So thank you very much, Lucky Emeka, my very good brother. It's good to be here on this show. Well, you've introduced me. My name is Sunday James Iga. I'm a journalist. I'm a development communications and knowledge management expert with extensive experience spanning strategic communications, knowledge management, media engagement, stakeholders engagement, and the overall gamut of humanitarian communication. I currently work with Technical Advice Connect, TA Connect, where I lead the knowledge management and communications efforts for TA Connect. TA Connect is actually a nonprofit organization that was set up by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to improve health outcomes for women and children. So basically, I'm passionate about using communications, knowledge management, storytelling above all, to support development effort, to strengthen institutions, and also to create meaningful impact. So I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for that brief introduction of your person. I know on a personal level that your bio is way more than the things you have introduced yourself to be. Such a humble fellow you are. And I must give you credit for that. Thank you very much, Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, the network went.
Yes.
All right, that is fine. If you people can see me and you can hear me, wherever you're watching from, here's what I want you to do in the comment section. I just want you to help me drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from and maybe drop a few questions as you have seen the topic. Okay. So, Sunday, what comes to mind with the topic voices in my head?
Well, thank you very much. Basically, um, for me, when we talk about issues around the voices in my head, you're talking about some of those voices that basically tell you different things. One thing you need to know first and foremost is that There are some things that are even buried deep within your subconscious, that even you yourself are not aware of. So from time to time, those things come to the fore, and when they come to the fore, to a large extent, they start speaking to you. Now, some of these things could be positive. Some of them also could also be negative. And most times, these are actually instinctive because some of these voices actually lead us to do some of the things we do. And some of those voices actually lead us to take some of the decisions, that we take. And it is very key and pivotal to also mention the fact that some of those voices are negative, while some are positive. So now there comes the issue of discernment, on your own part, your ability to filter, and feel that, okay, yeah, I need to listen to this voice. No, I don't need to listen to the other voice. I need to go the direction of this particular voice. I don't need to go the direction of this particular voice because, I mean, within the human person, lies all of these voices. And sometimes when they come, you even think that you are in a trance. Sometimes, there are times where you think you are even visualizing. You think you are visualizing. You think you are even seeing some of those visual elements of those things you are hearing in your head. So to a large extent, where you hear them, discernment now becomes very critical for you to be able to choose which of this voice to actually listen to. Well, you may not be able to make the right choice at a particular point in time, but for me personally, maybe let me start with even a story. For much of my life, there were many, many voices, you
Mm.
know, and some of these voices, yeah, some of these voices came from my own environment. Some, are not just even in my head. Some came from people who, had already decided what someone from my background, could become or could not become. And some also came from circumstances that seem to like suggest that certain dreams were simply too big for someone like me. You hear
Mm.
these voices, to a large extent, in your head. And at some point as well, some of those voices, I even came from even within you, because sometimes you question yourself, you know, you question yourself. But in between all of this chaos, you find another voice, and that voice is much more quiet and reflective. That voice for me that will keep telling me, irrespective of some of those, negativity, all of those things that will come that can tell you that, oh, no, 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 don't do this. Oh, no, you can do better. Oh, keep going. Oh, don't let this thing define you. Don't let this place define you. There's something beyond this. That voice, somehow becomes even louder than all other voice. And when it becomes, louder, and you are able to choose that voice that actually directs you on the right path. And the right path to a large extent might be a road that is less traveled by. You see that in the end, you'll see
Mm.
what we can all refer to as a good outcome.
Well, thank you very much for that. Now, looking at your journey, Sunday, I've come to
Mhm.
know you within the neighborhood we all grew up. Journey of life, knowing in spanned over 3 decades, right? Growing up to even see you as a big brother within the neighborhood. What would you say are the things that made it possible for you to keep going, even on days where the voices, both external and even within your person, what would you say were the things that kept you going?
Thank you very much, Lucky. That is a very, very interesting question. You see, Lucky, I came from a very, very humble background. Of course, you know that already, and you can also attest to it. My father was a locomotive driver, worked with the railway. My mother, a petty trader. We were not what you would refer to as a family of privilege. There were no special connections, no family wealth, no generational wealth, and no obvious pathway, that suggested that, I would eventually find myself in places I've been privileged to occupy today. I must tell you the truth. I grew up in Downquarter, same place you also grew up in, basically. And I want to be very honest about
Shout
what
out to
that
our
meant.
Downcutter peeps. We love you.
Yes. Yes, we love you. And I want to be very honest about what that actually means, what it means at that time to grow up in Downquarter. Downquarter as a community had a reputation. It had a reputation. It was not the kind of community people looked at and immediately actually thought that something good or something great will come out of here. You know, whether you like it or not, the truth is always the truth, and it is there that there were people who struggled with crime in that community where we grew up in.
Yeah.
There were people involved in all form of criminalities, including armed robbery. There were fraudsters, and there were people whose lifestyle were not exactly what you would want young people to emulate, right? So there were also people who were simply struggling to survive. And unfortunately, when a community develops a reputation, everybody inside that community gets placed under the same label
Yeah.
or stereotype, if you like. So if for me, for instance, now if you told people you were from Downquarter, they sometimes look at you, differently. I remember being in school and introducing myself to a couple of, the new dudes we met. I say, where I came from, Downquarter. Some of them have to look at me twice. I was like, hey, what is this guy doing here? You should not be in school because Downquarter, they will say, I got him Arayini or something like that. There was those unspoken question in the eyes of some people who are not able to tell you to your face. You from there, things like that. But again, you see, some people will laugh and even make comment that that community was known for producing thieves and crazy harlots and all of that. Well, it was very painful. But looking back now, I understand something. People were judging the environment they knew. They did not know the people they had not met, because we have a lot of great people who also emanated from this environment. They knew the stories of those who had taken the wrong path. They did not know that there were young people growing up in that same environment who were determined to take a different route. And truthfully, you are one of them. I also, became one of those people with a whole lot more, which who we are, of course, very proud of today, as products of that very particular community. So, Lucky, you agree with me that when you grow up in an environment where certain behaviors are normalized, the pressure is not always very, very obvious. Sometimes nobody tells you directly to become a criminal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's simply what you see every day. What you see every day is growing up in that kind of environment. When we grew up, it was what people celebrate. That in those days, when there's the train from I think from Niger and all of that, before you see police chasing one or two community boys who have gone to rob, who have gone to do all of this.
I saw
You
one.
know,
I saw one
okay,
very close to your house. I think then you guys have not
good,
moved to that place then.
absolutely, absolutely. So you see, that was the scenario then. That was like the scenario. And to a large extent, a lot of people feel that that kind of scenario should have influenced you. And slowly, those things can begin to define even what you think success look like.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see, it's the issue of those voices. You begin to hear the voice, because at that point there were many voices suggesting different things, like to me, and some essentially are saying, at that point we were young and we were equally stubborn. Some of those voices will tell you when it is time to go to school, oh, you want to go and play football, oh, forget school. Or if you are in school, there are a couple of your friends who they will say, oh, let's just go to this side. Let's move. So you look at the people, you see that, okay, they will say, and all of those things. Why are you stressing yourself with school? All of those voices are there. So basically, Uh, if you look at all of these things, all of this scenario, sometimes even the most dangerous voice is not the voice of even people around you who will be telling you all of these things. So it is the voice that eventually begins to repeat themselves inside
The
your head,
one inside.
inside your head. And once it becomes repetitive, it's very dangerous. That is how limitations are created. So you hear something enough times, and eventually you begin to believe it to yourself that, are you sure I can go anywhere? Nothing is happening. You've seen some people who are way above you, they've not gone anywhere. You see them, smoking, drinking, and all of those things. And I mean, you begin to hear this voice repetitively. And now, Lucky, that takes us
Mm,
to another very, very important point, the role that my family played. You see, I gave you our historical perspective. My parents, I told you about them earlier, but they may not have had much,
yeah.
materially, but they gave me something that money could not buy. They gave me values. They taught me that there was dignity in hard work, basically. My mom was there to always push me. They taught me that your circumstances do not give you permission to become a bad person, to become wayward. And so they were always after me. They were giving me that push. And my faith also became another major anchor. My faith as a Catholic, at a very young age, you will recall, I joined the Block Rosary Crusade of the Catholic Church. And looking back, I can confidently say that, it was one of those most important decisions of my childhood, because joining those associations in church gave me a moral compass. It gave me a sense of direction. It exposed me to a different kind of community, because while, there were things happening around me that could have pulled me in one direction, the church was pulling me in another direction. So my involvement in church activities became almost
Mm,
like a shield. It gave me like somewhere to go to. It gave me people to look up to that were different from the other people I was seeing. So it gave me responsibilities. It taught me service, and it taught me discipline. And most importantly, it gave me that deeper understanding of who I was. I became a strong believer in God. And I spent time serving God and trying to make things
mm,
easier for others through my involvement in church, through my activism in the youth, in the choir, and all of that. And today, when I look back, I realize that those
mm.
activities were not just religious activities, they were part of my character formation, and they were helping to build, the person I would actually eventually become. Yes, Lord.
Thank you very much for that. So I wanted to cut you. You have highlighted the role your parents played by giving you values and letting you know that hard work, there's dignity in labor and all of that. You've also pointed out that the Catholic Church helped hone you to become a better person today because it formed your own moral compass because of service you rendered while you were in that neighborhood. So, guys, Sunday James is saying parents should take up their role in trying to influence their children and impart values in them. And secondly, let them join associations within their age group or even the ones higher where they can learn good things from them because it is if if you're not allowing them, if you're not guiding them to learn good things, somebody is going to guide them to learn bad things.
Absolutely.
And you won't be there to observe it all through. All right. Thank you very much, Sunday. I wanted to ask again, what was the greatest challenge you can recall that you faced, right? That became more of a defining moment for you when those voices in your head keep coming, right? What was like a defining moment for you that you recall?
Thank you very much. That is again another very, very interesting question. You see, I'll talk about, I'll actually link this to my education. The struggle was real. The struggle was very real. You see, my educational journey.
You were shouldering it well and it was looking so simple.
It's all right. I mean, so I'll tell you the story now. So you get to hear it.
All right.
Great. So you see, my educational journey was not a smooth one. I attended a modest primary school, LEA, Shout out to LEA and all of the alumni. And later, a government secondary school we call Dekakuri. Dekakuri particularly, not now though, I mean at that point in time, was not an environment where everything was provided. There were times where literally we had to sit on stone to take lessons. There were no chairs, no benches. Imagine trying to learn under those circumstances. Imagine having a big dream while your immediate reality is telling you something completely different.
I can imagine, because I went
yeah,
through that too in Enugu.
yeah. So there were no guarantees. There were challenges with learning materials. There were also financial constraints, things I mentioned to you earlier. And like many young people from humble background as I am, or as I was, I had to find ways to support myself. I did menial job. I did what I could. My parents supported me with whatever little they could afford. But sometimes what they could afford was simply not enough. And I understood that. I did not blame them. I knew they were doing their best. Now comes that challenging moment. One moment that could have easily broken me. I finished secondary school, Dekakuri then, and then my WAEC results were not what anyone would call spectacular. Because at that point, right WAEC is what? It's not like what is happening today. I had around 5 Ds and 4 credits. So for someone who wanted to continue his education, that could have been the end of the road for me, because what I was looking for, the subjects, I don't have them, right? So it would have been very easy to say, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe, people were right all along. Maybe people from my background really cannot go beyond maybe secondary school. Maybe this is as far as I can go. But I did not stop. You see, let me tell you what happened after that wire. I did not go back to school. I did not go back to any lesson. I went to Leventis Roundabout to buy what they call key points. I brought them back home across all subjects and past questions. I brought them back home. I went and hustled on my own because it was a shame. I could not even say anything at home because, I did not meet the expectation. My parents themselves were not so happy, even though they encouraged me. But I went back, I hustled and got the money by myself and paid for external exam. I read those things by myself. This time I became serious. I was teaching myself. I didn't go anywhere. I took this subject again. I worked on myself, and eventually I passed enough to secure admission into higher education. See, that moment taught me something that has stayed with me. Yeah, it taught me something, and that is stayed with me. And that is staying with me. That failure is not always a full stop. Sometimes it is simply a comma. It is just like a comma. It is not a full stop. It also teaches me that you can pause, you can reassess, you can learn, you can try again, and you can continue, basically.
Wow. Thank you very much for that. Quite insightful. And for many other persons who have had to experience a difficult moment in their journey, just like we're experiencing BITS power now, it has nothing to do with your future. It shouldn't shape the outcome of your future. Failure
Absolutely.
has got nothing on you if you stay focused on where you ought to be in life. So thank you very much, James, for that response. Then there are persons who, because of the things that has happened to them in the past, the voices that keeps playing in their head is one that suggests that they will never make it. How would you advise such a person in order to make life better for themselves and make themselves a success?
Okay. So when you come from a humble background and you carry yourself with confidence, people can sometimes misunderstand it. But basically, that voice continues to tell you something. And I mentioned earlier the issue around discernment. The voice can be trying to weigh you down. But you yourself can be telling yourself that, well, I may not be there yet, but I believe I can get there. You see, for me personally, for me personally, because I'd like to answer these questions by telling you, by painting a scenario with my real life stories. Because when I eventually got into higher education, the challenges did not suddenly disappear.
Mm.
You know, when I went to school, the challenges continued. There were students who could immediately just buy handouts. If they say, oh, lecturer comes and say, oh, let's buy a handout. There are people that on the go, they will drop money. But me, maybe it has to take like 1 week. I have to go home and find a way to come back and get it. At some point, because I'm trying to drive somewhere. Because again, effort is critical. Because sometimes when some people have access to these learning materials that I don't, most of them don't even care to read. That period where they go to play, I just borrow it and sit down and I read a jot. I read a jot. And eventually, when we're at our exams and the results come out, you see that I am actually somehow top of the class. But I really do not have access to what everybody had. So there is no excuse. We need to make effort. We need to make effort. You have to
There is no
improvise.
excuse.
There is no excuse
There is no
whatsoever.
excuse. We need to
There's no
make
excuse.
effort.
Yes, you need to make effort. You need to improvise. You need to improvise. That improvisation is critical. That's where you show initiative. That's where your creativity, you need to be creative at all points. Even in the midst of difficulty, be creative, because that creativity that will bring you out of it. You need to work hard. I mean, there's no arguing that one. You need to find ways. You see, if you find ways around your limitation, that is all you need. You need to find way around, because there are ways. It's just that those ways or those roads you need to find around your limitation are less traveled by. There are not roads that people will take. Maybe they are thorny, painful, they are challenging. But I mean, you could just still do it. Because to a large extent, if you look at us now, for instance, okay, I struggled in secondary school. I told you about the WAEC, and all of that. But later, when I even went to the higher institution, I graduated among the top of my class. Even later, during my postgraduate studies at Bayero University, I graduated with distinction and finished top of my class. So you could see, now just imagine that journey, from the struggle and everything I told you about to some of those things I've been able to accomplish. I mean, now let's drive it back home. A boy from down quarters, a boy from a family where the father was a locomotive driver and the mother was a petty trader, a boy who attended a school where students sometimes sat on stones to learn, a boy who had to struggle to work, a boy who borrowed handout because he could not afford them. And eventually, that same boy was graduating at the top of his class. That is instructive. That is why I tell people, never allow your beginning to intimidate your destiny. That is it.
Thank you very much for that. The network was deciding how this session will go, but thank God you're back. I think we'll go on from there. Another question I have here is, how can one partner with his environment or the people around him in order to get the negative voices out of their head?
Good.
Because
You
there
see,
are there are people who help us positively, and there are those within our environment who make it difficult for us to focus on the positive things about ourselves and where we envision our future to be. So, how can we partner with our environment and people who are doing well in order to get these negative voices out of our head?
great. I mean, that is actually the most simplest part. And again, I will use anecdotes. I will use stories, my own story, because I like to use it to actually drive home the point. Because for me,
You are a
I
storyteller,
come,
sir.
yeah, I am a storyteller. so we use evidence. So we use evidence to craft our narrative. So I like to use evidence so that the story is evidence-based, so that it's not generic, basically. So you see, I could have become a product of my own environment. Me, we've spoken about that. I could have ordinarily become a criminal because there are a lot of people who were into crime. I could have ordinarily decided not to go to school because there are a lot of people who dropped out and decided not to go to school or do anything meaningful. But I chose this path. I gave you a story about, so it's your association is critical. What you are doing with your time is very, very important. Very, very important. If you're doing constructive things with your time, if there are people within your environment who you identify, who you see as role model, who you feel you should model your life after them, you need to get in touch with those people to have conversations with them. And this is perhaps the most important part of my own story. I could easily have become a product of my own environment. I could have looked around and said, oh, this is how people survive here. I could have followed the crowd to go left. I could have also allowed the reputation of Danquata to become my identity. There was a time I went to Ferran, to look for a job. I think it was after secondary school and we were still struggling to get admission. Then I went to Ferran to look for a job. And there was one guy there, they called the guy P.O. I'll never forget his name. He was like the manager there in Ferran Bakery. I think they called him P.O. or something like that. So when I went and I said, oh, he was interviewing me. First, when I went, he was a lot of paparazzi. He sat and he faced the wall. And when I came in, he rolled his chair around, some of those intimidation tactics. Well, I'm a guy with a lot of confidence. So he looked at me, I looked at him. Then he said, oh, where are you from? Then I said, Dankota. I said, no, Dankota's. The guy is saying he's not sure their things here are safe. But I had to convince him otherwise. Tell him my story as to why I am different. So, I could have allowed the guy to just weigh me down and then my community would become my identity. I could have accepted the limitations that he wanted to place on me, but I made a conscious decision. I made a conscious decision to tell him, I know I am different. And the way I spoke with some level of confidence, he actually budged and I got that job then, and the rest is history. So I have been mentioning that fact and using that phrase, the road less traveled by. I picked that phrase because in my literature days in secondary school, from a poet, and in the end, he said, in the end, I took the road that is less traveled by, and that actually became the best road. Yes. So, because to a large extent, if you follow the crowd, a lot of people are following a particular road. You see them, they are all going towards a particular direction. That might not be the right place. But that road that is less traveled by, that is thorny, that has a lot of challenges, could actually be the best route for you to take. And that road was not always easy. Sometimes it can be lonely. Some people will laugh at you. Some people will laugh at you, I can assure you. And sometimes, even you yourself, you will even doubt yourself. And for me, even sometimes I wonder whether all the effort was worth it. But every time I felt like giving up, something inside me, that voice again will come and say, keep going, guy. There's light, at the end of this tunnel. And my resilience at that point will not kick in. So you need to be resilient. That is actually the key word. Your resilience is key. You need to build that resilience capacity to be able to withstand any pressure, at all that you've seen from your environment. And you need to associate with those you see who are making the right decisions and the right choices, who have seen succeed in one way or the other. Because the people you move around with, you yoke with, will decide the kind of your company, actually is might be a clear reflection of the kind of person you are, except of course if you are that person that is able to traverse various companies and group of people without definitely getting influenced. Some people have those gifts. I particularly have that gift, so I for one have that gift. So again, beyond that, you need to be able to partner with those, and even in the community, there are groups, that you can belong to. that are actually motivating people to grow. There are individuals you can look up to who you can see as shining light. In those days, I used to recall, you know, because I was very serious about my school and all of that, and parents sometimes when they need to scold their children, they will now be telling them that, don't you people see that boy? Don't you people see that boy? And, sometimes we hear all of those things. So I mean, that is actually one thing. Your resilience should kick in. Build that resilience capacity to be able to withstand some of this pressure, and then don't allow what you see around your environment to define you, and try to associate only with the best, and even as much as possible, do not, irrespective of the voices you are hearing, do not succumb to any voice that will tell you to do those things that you believe, deep within you, that they are not right, basically.
All right. Thank you very much. If you're joining us, ladies and gentlemen, I have been talking with Sunday James Eager. He's a resource person for today, and tonight's session focuses on voices in my head. The idea behind it is we get to understand or find ways to tell the negative voices in our head to go away. And you cannot do that except uh, by the thing Sunday has pointed out. First, you must associate with the right people. Secondly, you partner with them. Thirdly, be resilient. Fourthly, don't allow anything anyone says or even what your mind is telling you become the reason you do things you believe are not right. Thank you very much, Sunday. I am wishing we could spend more time, but today we just want to keep it brief so to make up for lost time. I know you will be coming up some other time to share more wisdom with us, and we pray that the years and the adventure ahead of you will see you on the better side of life. Thank you so much for accepting to do this with us today. We appreciate you. One final word for our viewers.
Okay, so basically, for those who are part of this program today, would like to say thank you. My final message, on this show is that if there's someone watching today who feel trapped by their background, I want you to hear me very clearly. You see, you are not your postcode. You are not your parents' financial decision. You are not your worst examination results. You are not the opinion of the people who do not believe in you. You are not the community you were born into. You are not your own failures. And you are certainly not the negative voices around you. So there is something inside you that circumstances cannot take away. Believe in it. Nurture that thing. Work on it. Protect it. And God, will give you that grace to walk through with it. That is my final word for our viewers today.
Thank you very much, Sunday. We appreciate you. Thank you, viewers. We pray that we will meet you all on the positive side of life, where the voices in your head has influenced you to become a better person. Do have a pleasant night rest. I'll see you some other
Thank,
time. It's been Voices and Forces, and I remain Jonathan Lokiemeka saying, do have a good night.
thank you.